Hi, I want to welcome you to today's Defiant Learn Trail. On today's Defiant Learn Trail, I'm going to show you how to create a web service, deploy it to your IIS, and our web service will be using the entity data model. It will be connecting to a database table to reflect the quarterly sales. This example is quite unique if you have an integration environment where you need to integrate an external data with a particular application. It could be SharePoint, so you may want to create a web service that will be consumed by SharePoint. So here we're going to be creating a web service. This web service will be using the entity data model, and then it will use it to connect to the data inside the database in Microsoft SQL Server. I'm going to show you the table right now. Here is the table in my Management Studio. This is the table here. It's called quarterly sales. This table called quarterly sales is located in the database sample BI. So I am going to create an ASP.NET web service that will use an entity data model to connect to this table, and then we can have access to the content of this table. It can read the content of the table per item or as a list. That is what I'm going to do, and I'll show you how to do it, provided you be attentive and you follow along. This is the content of the table right here. So having seen the content of the table, the next thing I'm going to do is commence the creation of the ASP.NET project. So let's do that right now. To create an ASP.NET project, all you need is to open up your Visual Studio. I've already got one there, but I'm going to open a fresh tab. Here is my Visual Studio. I'm using Visual Studio 2012. My Visual Studio is now up. So what I'm going to do is to create an ASP.NET project. Come along as we do that. So to do that, you could simply click on File, and you point down to New. Excuse me, that wasn't right. That's New there, and that's the website. Click on Website. I'm going to call it Quarterly Sales Web Service. This is what we have. We have ASP.NET empty website. So it actually depends on which one you want to create. So is it ASP.NET web service? Or what do you want to create actually? I'd like the name to be I'll make it shorter. Q service. Yes, I think that's better. Q sales service. I like it that way. Well, let me bring them in lowercase. Better. I think I like it like this. You could name your own anything. I'm going to choose ASP.NET Web Service. There you are. I picked it because I'm creating a web service. So I'll click OK. Okay, our project is done. has been created for us to continue, and inside it you could see our services component has a method inside it, a web method called hello world. We will be editing that as time goes on, but for now we need to connect to our data inside Microsoft SQL Server, and we're going to do that by adding the Ado.NET entity data model. To do that, I want you to right click on your project. This is our project here. I clicked on it, so I right click on it and I move down the get to add, and I have add item. I'm going to be adding a new item. The new item I'm going to add is that of a data model. This is the data model here. I call it sales data. I like the model attached to it, so I could say Q sales model. Okay, I'll add data to it. Q sales data model. That's nice. So I've picked the Ado.NET entity data model and I've named it, and I'll click add. Now the system will simply tell me that, look, you've got a data here. Would you like us to actually move it into an app underscore data directly, or an app underscore code directly, depending on what you're calling in? So I would say, well, I think I like that. So I would say yes, go ahead, you could do the job for me. Oh, now I have the entity data model wizard. I'm going to use it to create the model that I'll be using here in this web service. So I have generate from a database, or I should create an empty model. Actually, I'm connecting to an existing database, the database I showed you earlier in Microsoft SQL Server. So I'll leave it at generate from a database, and then I'll click on next. Okay, here we are. We need a connection. We don't have an existing one, so what I'm going to do is I'll create one. I'll create a new connection to the database I showed you earlier. So I've clicked on new there. Okay, here you have it. I'm going to click on this. There you have it. That's my SQL Server database server. So I've picked it, and I'm going to pick the database. If you remember, the database is Sample BI. So I've picked Sample BI, and I'm going to test my connection. It's always right. And okay, now I have a connection to the database. I'm going to click OK. Okay, this is what it names it. It names it Sample BI Entities. That's the name it's going to name it inside of that config. Do I have any issue with that? It's okay. There is nothing wrong with having it as Sample BI Entities. So I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. So next should do. As you can see, it's retrieving database information. So let's just wait. Now I need to see the tables. We're there. Remember the tables under the DBO, database objects. I've got quarterly sales. That's our main man there. So I'll click on quarterly sales. That is what I want to get actually. That's my focus. So I've selected the table that my entity model will be using. Remember, your entity model won't work well if that particular table does not have a primary key. It should have an identifier. So mine has an identifier, so you should have that at the back of your mind. So my entity model is going to work fine. At this moment, I'm going to click finish. Okay, so I guess we're done. Now we're done. We're done with that aspect. We have our entity model. Our data entity model is there. It's actually opening. Just give it a moment. Give it a moment. Relax, relax. It's coming up. Ndidi. Yes. Akwifugi Aketa. Have you seen it? That's what I said in my language. Akwifugi Aketa. So you can see what we have there. These are the fields from my table. Isn't that beautiful? That's nice. So we're going to be working with it. We are going to be working with it. The next thing I'm going to do is to create an object that reflects the structure of my table. So I'm going to create a class that will reflect the structure of my table. This class is going to have properties, and with it I can now create a list. I'll create a list that reflects this object. So I need object to reflect the structure of my table, and this object will now be applied to the list I will create in the web services. So that is the next thing we are going to do. It's time to create the object. So let's create an object that will reflect the structure that I get from my table. To do that, all I need to do is to right click on my project once again. Guess my system is still loading. Oh, there you go. So I have add again, add new item. I'm actually adding a new item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a class because I'm creating a class. There you have it. That's a class. That's a class. It's an object. It's going to be an object to reflect the structure of the table, so I could use it in a list. I'm going to call it sales obj. OBJ, not Obasanjo, but object. So sales obj. Don't think it's Obasanjo. It's not Obasanjo. Okay, so we have sales obj there. So I'm going to click add. That's for the class I'm creating. I'll be asking them to, hey, this has to do with some codings. Would you like me to move it into the app code folder? I would say fine. Go ahead. Yes. So there you go. You have it. And now I have sales obj. Okay, inside this sales object, I'm going to create properties to reflect the table I told you about earlier. And here you go with it. It's quite simple. Here are the structures. This is what I have here. I don't really need that. This is a but if you look at what I've entered carefully, you find out you have int, and you've got some int with a question mark on it. In this case, I have them to specify fields that allow nulls. In my table, the year fields do allow null, the first quarter fields allow null, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarters, they admit nulls as values. Whereas the int, which is the company ID, does not permit null. It is the primary key. You have to specify a unique value and cannot be empty, whereas these other ones can be empty. So consequently, I have to reflect it using the question mark, just as I have done, because of the nullability of these particular columns or these particular fields. I hope you understand it. So you could do it similar to yours. Having done that, I'm going to move to the next stage. Let me quickly save what I've done. So now we have a sales object with its components properly set. That's beautiful. It's good to move a step further. So let's move.